So all that I think is incredibly useful for people who are coming in and looking to sort of set up a structure. So the next thing that I'd like to touch on, you mentioned after Switzerland, you go to Australia, somewhere with a kind of bigger structure already and a bigger budget. Is that fair?
Yeah, very much.
Yeah. So what are the dangers or the pitfalls there from your experience? So a lot of people have this as well, rather than coming into a new team where you have to go through all these processes, you come into a bigger team, maybe they're a bit clearer on what they want, but also they've got all the money that you could need. This has been a problem in esports too.
So that's your question, sort of.
What's the positives and minuses of coming into somewhere like Australia where they have a much bigger program?
So in many ways, it's easier in that you then have this support structure already in place. Support structure with a lot of very impressive support structure. The issues are then faced with is you have to manage that whole support structure. And each part of that support structure has its own why, if we go back to that, its own egos and its own issues, and it has to justify itself to maintain its position in that, which can create a very difficult to manage beast. Suddenly, rather than a boat, a dinghy you can flip around, you're looking more at a super tanker that you have to try and turn. So you can be far less nimble, and that was something I don't know if I got quite right, but it was certainly something quite. It was very good in many ways, and you had a lot of resource, people to talk to and ideas, and you could bounce them around. But in the end, you can't lose control as the coach. Examples of an athlete or a player says, "Oh, the physio says I should do it like this," and once you get that, it's a lot of red flags and alarm bells. Like, well, actually, no. Who's running the program, whose head's on the block in the end. Obviously, you don't say that to the player, but actually that then needs a very different management style. So in some ways, careful what you wish for. But equally, when it works, it's tremendous. You have a fantastic support system. The player or the athlete feels very supported in any way. If they have a problem, if you've got it working right, they know who to go to. They're not sleeping there. There's somebody who can help. They're not eating. They're weight loss, weight gain, or whatever it is. You have all these amazing resource to help. But going back to what we said before, is you have to make sure you're not losing sight of your fundamentals. What do you actually have to do to be good at your sport? Esport, you have to spend that time and capacity of basically sitting in front of the screen working hard. You have to do that, and until you're doing that, having the bells and whistles doesn't add value. It's not necessary. Nice to have, but does it add value? And that, as a coach, is something you need to really keep an eye on. I think with the bigger system, the easy one is you can use the Rocky thing. You've got your small hardcore with a mission, and if the world's against us, how are we going to prove it? Which is a lovely motivation to work with as a coach. It's very okay. This is us against the world, and what can we do? Which is a fun area to coach in, and you step into, I guess, a very entitled. We are who we are, so we'll win sort of environment, and creating the right attitude and pressure in that environment is a different set of skills. It's not easy. It wasn't certainly something I wasn't so comfortable with, and that it was, the whys were quite different and harder to work with around that.
And
in many ways, it's not easy. I think it's.
Sorry, I think the connection went a bit. I didn't mean to interrupt you. What I was going to say is, if you're coming into a structure and they haven't done that step of justifying the upgrade, like you talked about before, and there is all this there's all this baggage. You don't know if it's excess baggage or not.
Yeah.
Would you strip it back and then kind of add things back in? Or, that's really, we talked about the brutal side of high performance before. That's kind of very very brutal as well. Like, how do you work out if each of these parts are justified?
I think piece by piece. What are the results? An easy one to me is, there's a lot of very good physios. I don't mean to bash physios, but actually, how many training days have I lost? Well, every training day I've lost, it's like, okay, well, physio, why was that a training day? Why, what was missing there? And sort of turn it round, as opposed to, oh, I got them fixed. It's like, well, how many days weren't they fixed for? And obviously the environment has to be right to go down that sort of conversation. But it's really aligning the support team with the goal, as opposed to them. It's sounding a bit sort of bash the support team this, but it's not. But we all have to justify what we're doing in the end. Okay, to say, well, no one got injured, it's all great. It's like, well, okay, no one got injured, but they didn't win anything because they were all not training hard enough.
Mm.
So it's finding that balance and the buy-in and the right people. And I think once you start to set your culture, and it's finding the people who will buy into that culture, and the confidence that actually this is the way we're going to go. I think quite quickly people will leave or join depending on that. Conflict with your support team is incredibly destructive. That's really, it just destroys everything you're trying to work. So I think that's something that you have to be very aware and careful of. Whispering around the back and things is absolutely devastating for an organisation and a team. You have to get that buy-in that whoever it is, whether it's the nutritionist, is on board with effectively how hard you need to push the players to get the result you need to. Once whoever it is starts saying, "Oh, they're very tired, I think it's too hard," the moment they say that to a player, boof, it's gone. You've really lost it. They can come and say that to you and say, "Look, Simon, you're crucifying them. I think they're on the edge. You're going to lose them." It's okay. Well, let's have a look at why. Why do you think that? Then it's a very good conversation. But it's creating that communication, that trust, that buy-in to what you're trying to do. Then it can be a very strong thing in that the player can't hide, if you like. They're being, when they go and see the support person, they say, "Well, actually, shut up and get on with it. You're soft," and whatever it is. Actually, what do you mean? I came here for a little shoulder to cry on. It's actually, it can be very good. But unifying that message I think that's perhaps the answer. Being able to unify that message from the whole team, as in the support team, is really key.
It's good to hear that that's a problem in sport as well, because I thought that was just a problem in esports. We always used to say, especially when we were doing this in a gaming house, 2 coaches and a manager, and we always used to say it's kind of like little kids who go to mum and ask for a chocolate, and she says no, so then they go to dad and ask him
exactly.
see if they can
Dad
get
said I could.
yeah.
It's normal human nature. But obviously, when you've got a big support structure, you are, as a coach, running a support structure, and it's important not to lose that. You can spend all your time running that as opposed to the sessions, and sometimes that's okay. You have an assistant coach or whatever, and it's working. But it's quite quickly, as a coach, you can step away from that. One-on-one time with your players. If you've moved from Mixar Sports, from Rocky to Manchester United, you've got a very different dynamic and expectation and support team and everything else. And some coaches can't make that change; it doesn't fit them, and others thrive in the other environment.
I think actually, I mean, because my background is in film, I would also hadn't tied this together before, but say the same thing about directors. There's directors who are incredible indie directors who make a series of amazing films, are very praised, and then they get a big budget, and suddenly it's, at best it's boring and mundane, but often it's just a complete disaster because it's
exactly.
Yeah, the more people you have, the more of your time becomes about management. And that's fine as long as you know that and as long as you're up for that. But we see people who are, have been a solo coach for a long time and then move into an organization and with a load of money, and they're like, oh, great, I'll have like 3 or 4 people. But if you want to spend the whole time doing the sessions with the players, then maybe you can't have that many people because you will just lose track of them.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of the transitions I made from a coach to performance director. And actually, then you manage that environment. So are you getting best out of the talents you've got? So you've got a coach who's an amazing solo coach. Don't then put them in charge of a team of 10 of other coaches. Again, it's managing your assets, and your film example is very nice. One man and his camera in the jungle making an amazing film is not going to have a team of 50 and the whole setup and be able to run it the same. Why do you want to put them in that place? So I think exactly right with that. But that's to me whether it is the CGO or the one of the senior leadership team of the org has got it wrong. If you're hiring a coach for that, make sure they're able to do that. Maybe you add some strings, but don't lose that bit that you hired them for.